Greetings! Welcome to Terraform Live. This is our cosplay cavalcade. We're going to talk all about costumes and cosplay and all of that kind of thing. So if you are on the watching us on YouTube or anything like that, feel free to shoot us some questions or anything like that. We've got a good panel here today. As we go through here, we've got our resident master Nero. How you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Very good. Right, and you brought a friend with you today. Why don't you go ahead and make the introductions here, because that's a kind of a special thing.
Yeah, so we've talked about it before on air, that I'm doing essentially a project, I guess you could call it, called Revenant Armory, and we make PVC lightsabers, armor, helmets, like this kind of stuff, various things. And this is my partner, Zach. So
it's great. It's great to finally be here. Finally, nice to meet you all. I heard a lot.
He's the talent behind the operation, so I just.
No, without you, everything is just a pipe.
All right. Okay. And then we'll continue here with the panel. We've got some of our apprentices on hand. Michael Gerstel from Germany. He's on the program here. How you doing, Michael?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. We've got Celine. She's all masked up, just like everybody else here. How's it going, Celine?
It's going pretty good here, Master. How are you?
Good, good, good. Okay. And our resident, I don't know, I guess would be costume expert, at least here, John Solomon. How's it going, John?
Good. I'm far from an expert. far from an expert.
Well, amongst us, we've got definitely a lot more experience than the rest of us that way. Okay, so. So anyway, I guess we just start right into it. So the reason we're doing this is because, of course, when we're talking about lightsabers and we're talking about Star Wars and all kinds of stuff, then it's pretty much costumes are going to come into it. And there's lots of different ways to kind of approach this. We've got kind of canon ways and non-canon ways. As you see, we're probably a fan of the latter there a little bit more, but there's a whole lot of material and a whole lot of things to talk about as far as costuming goes. So while we've got everybody here, we can, I don't know what exactly should we start with. Should we start as we go here, because most of us, some of us, have armor on here, and unfortunately, we were hoping to have somebody from the 501st join us, who would be a good expert in armor, as far as requirements for Star Wars stuff goes. But we can, I don't know, shall we start with that, with kind of armor stuff?
Yeah, we can always come back, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, this, when we're talking about kind of what we do, and I'm going to kind of take this off here so I can show it. Armor is really obviously a kind of a sought after thing when you're dealing with people who like swords and all of that kind of thing. So it comes up a lot in our circles a lot. This is just a regular LARP armor. I've worn it before on the show. It's just basic leather, stuff like that. It could protect if you're wearing nice thick gambeson or something like that under from our little carbon polycarbonate blades. But anyway, it's more kind of to look for. Now, Zach, you do a lot of armor, foam stuff, mostly for the costume stuff.
Yeah.
And that's going to have some of the same limitations and stuff like that we have, but not exactly the same. I don't know what kind of stuff do you do? What kind of armor do you make, and what do you make it out of?
So initially, I started doing DC superheroes. What I'm wearing right now, this started out as a Red Hood from Arkham Knight. This is basically just EVA for floor foam mat, and I get this from Harbor Freight. It's a US based store. Looks like this when you first buy it. You get 4 of these for $9, and I guess the most important thing is using a sharp blade. And I start off with paper templates, make sure everything works out right, find someone who will help you. To adhesive everything, I use contact cement. Has great uses, and for this armor specifically, I wanted it to be more movable. You see a lot of the Master Chief or Halo armors is very, very rigid in the torso. So I wanted to be able to try and sit down and be a little bit more comfortable throughout the day. So what I had done is I created these plates, which you can see here, which have in between each plate has elastic straps. And when I'm at the con, it's attached to my belt. So if I want to lean back, it leans back with me, kind of like a lobster back. It's the same thing here on my back. So I wanted it to be very movable. I wanted it to, at cons, especially, New York Comic Con, there's so many people just bumping into you and like tearing your armor off of your body. So with the experiences that I had with that, I wanted it to be as flexible as possible. So when, meeting up with Nero, I wanted, we were talking about maybe adapting this into something that could be a little bit more for, a little bit beyond cosplay. So there's a lot of uses for what this could be used for.
I muted myself. Okay. Yeah, that's cool stuff. Now you were talking about like the contact cement and all that stuff, and obviously that for us, we need something more than contact cement if we're going to be hitting each other. But generally speaking, we don't use the armor. The armor that we use in fighting is not cosplay armor, and we should probably put that out there right now. We may be talking about how we're trying to like experiment with different types of armor and stuff like that, but there is no cosplay armor that's good armor. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that's just we'll put that out there. So anyway, this armor here, which is like I said, LARP armor. So it's a little more active, I suppose, and they hit each other with foam weapons and things like that. And you can see it has pretty traditional connectors and all of that kind of thing, which are pretty simple. You could very easily make armor like this out of that foam yourself in your garage or what have you. It's pretty easy to work with, yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy. You just need a heat gun or even a hair dryer. You don't have to be fancy, and a sharp blade.
There you go.
Patience.
Yeah, a lot of patience, a lot of time too.
Yeah. It's I'm thinking maybe one of our ways that we're looking to experiment into getting into practical armor is we've been talking about different ideas, and I guess one of the big things, like Anonymous was saying, the ability to connect the pieces together. It's kind of difficult with foam. We were talking about it before, and the foam can sometimes tear. So it's not as easy to maybe like use rivets or something like that, like with leather. But we're thinking it may work out better if we have a base layer of some other material and then basically pad it with foam to add protective layering to it. It's just a matter of making that cost effective, making it practical, making it flexible. So
yeah. Now the thing that I kind of think of as far as armor goes is for a lot of people watching, they want to do it on a budget, right? And they're going to do it themselves and all of this. And armor is kind of, if you have the time to put into it, it's kind of an easy easy cosplay kind of thing, because it goes over pretty much anything you wear, or at least within reason or whatever. So it can be it can be very it's very easy to do like that. Whereas sometimes getting stuff made, the soft parts, which we'll talk about in a bit. Can also be, pricey or whatever. And then you have the issues of heat and all of that kind of thing. But anyway, so yes, so we'll kind of we touched on that. We can kind of go. Let me ask John now. Armor comes in. You're in the Rebel Legion and some other cosplay groups, correct?
Yes, I'm a member of the Rebel Legion. In my area, the Rebel Legion and the 501st work really closely together. So, I mean, some areas they're really separate, but in my area, we do everything together.
Right. Okay. Cool. Now they do have now the Rebel Legion does more of the Jedi stuff, whereas 501st does a lot more of the armored.
Yeah, we have in the Rebel Legion we can have clone troopers, of course. Anybody that's a good guy, so, for example. So the clone troopers are considered good. So we have a lot of clone troopers that are joint membership. So we do some armor, but yes, definitely the stormtroopers and Mandalorian mercenaries is another group we work with occasionally that they do a lot of stuff with armor. Usually the vacuum form center or PVC, they get it in kits and they cut it out. I've actually got a kit of old Republic Jedi armor in a box in my basement that's in kit form that I gotta trim up and clean up and paint and strap and everything. That's supposed to be this summer, but it's looking like a fall project now. So yeah.
So yes, what was it? The Jedi armor. That brings up a good point because that's from a video game, right?
Yes, Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO.
Right.
Where it was introduced.
And then most of the stormtroopers and stuff like that, that's actually taken from actual costumes that people,
Yes.
Okay. So we had a question on the thing here that where to take inspiration from, and I think that taking inspiration from things like the real costumes, is one thing, because there's actually a lot of design in trying to make them work as costumes, already kind of in how they look. Whereas with a video game, a lot of times, and I think you mentioned this year with the Master Chief kind of thing, the armor is built up to look nice, and it only operates that way in the make-believe world of the the video game. Like, it's too big in the chest because you'd never be able to do that. So I think these are kind of concerns, not concerns, but things to think about as you're making them. And I think taking inspiration from historical sources and stuff like that would be a pretty good idea. Would you?
Absolutely. Especially if you're considering, from my opinion, trying to make a suit of armor for what we do, fighting with lightsabers and such. Somebody asked me some advice. I'm also involved in the Society for Creative Anachronism. We do heavy fighting and fencing. So studying medieval armor for that, rather than just strapping some plastic together and going out there and hitting your friends with a stick. But if you actually try to recreate medieval armor, you realize that as time went on and technology improved, they really figured it out. There's one particular medieval breastplate that's literally a breastplate, comes just below the ribs, but it's actually 3 sections, and it's 3 sections so that it can collapse when you cross your arms. So, but it's overlapped. It's a particularly really interesting, very simple European breastplate, but it's really nice. And for applications of what we do, with hitting people with lightsabers, you know, polycarbonate sticks, it would work really well. It would protect the chest and you know, quite well, and it would allow you to use a two-handed grip, or you know, some of the side stances or whatever. Where like a suit of Halo armor, you know, it's like you can hold a rifle and walk around as Master Chief, but you can't really do anything unless that poly texture in the video game allows you to do whatever you want, you know.
Right.
Physics.
Yeah, Zach, do you want to?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're trying to create video game armor, like you said, it's, you know, obviously it doesn't translate to the real world. It's great resources. You can look up a lot of forums, but if you're trying to figure it out on your own, I used a lot of, you know, real examples trying to figure out, you know, how to connect my shoulder armor to my chest plate. How could I make my chest plate collapsible? So I did draw a lot of inspiration when, you know, creating armor. And so, you know, you take those creative liberties, but there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of, LARPing forums where they talk about creating LARPing armor. There's a lot of cosplay forums. There's a lot of great resources out there nowadays.
Cool. Yeah. And we'll probably gather up a lot of that information. We'll put it in the description of this after the show, and we post it. And of course, if you don't know what the RPF is, the RPF is also a really great resource for like pretty much everything from props to costumes. So I'll just throw that out there. Anyway, so yeah, at this point, why don't we ask Celine and Michael, because they've been putting their, you know, they've kind of got their costumes together, and as they're starting out here, and what are some of the things that you guys have found as challenges and all that, and how have you kind of addressed stuff and in putting together costumes and stuff like that, or have you been doing costumes before doing this? Anybody, either one of you.
Well, obviously my costume is a self-made costume. I wanted it to look old and shabby, which is good because I'm not good in sewing anything. Oop, 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 oop. Am I here? What's that? So, what I find difficult when putting together your costume is that even without armor, that how to hold the pieces together in a good way that they look fine and neat when moving around. It's the same with armor, and it's the same with normal costume stuff. You do a little posing with your saber, and the tabard is off the way, and so what I did is what I found useful is to tie them together. So my whole costume, tabard, cloak, and everything, it's a suit together in some pieces, so it can't move too much around when I move. So that was something I found extremely comfortable, when I don't have to look every time I did something, look if everything still is in shape. So that might be a good thing to find the places that that need special attention and tie them together, and you're fine. And with the rest, the internet is full of samples and stuff for finding a good way to make those hoods or something like that. So just be creative. So again, I'm not, didn't have a costume I wanted to look like somebody, so it was pretty easy because the outcome was not fixed, not in a way. So that's it for me so far.
Yeah.
And no, I didn't play with costumes before I entered here TPLA, and so I'm very but I would definitely like to put some add-ons on it. So with Revenant armor, some of your foam armor in places, that would be fantastic. So you've hooked me already.
Yeah. Well, that's a good. You bring up a good point of especially like tabards and stuff like that. So when you're talking about like the Jedi costume, the Jedi getup, right? You're usually talking about tabards, a tunic like these here, you know, a belt of this ilk, you know, maybe some food capsule kind of thing, pouches, you know, that kind of thing. It's generally fairly easy, but this whole apparatus up here is all very, you know, very touchy, especially if you're going to move around a lot, or even if you're not. They do tend to slide off and stuff. So I like these surcoats that they're sort of like tabards, but they're not really like tabards, so they don't do nothing. That's my solution. I've gotten these from Twin Roses Design, so we'll put the link, of course, in the description. And all that. John, what are some other? You got some ideas of how to keep everything, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my obi in the back, my tabards come together and they're stitched right to the obi. It's all covered by the belt, so my back tabards always hang perfectly, so I don't ever have to worry about them getting skewed or anything once I get my obi on straight. The tabards are held on with you can't see it, but small bra hooks or eye hooks. So they're just stitched on. So when I put my tabards on, I just clip them right in. They stay up. They don't fall. They stay right where they're supposed to be. And I have one that holds my tabards together so they don't become separated. So that's what works for me. You can also do the Obi-Wan trick of just not have back tabards. His just came in, were attached to his obi in Phantom Menace. A lot of people don't like that look for some reason, but it's perfectly legitimate for Jedi. One less thing to worry about. But that, I mean, Chad, you saw that when we were at Celebration 8, it's like, you know, it was like a lot of the Jedi is like, if there was anything wrong with their costume, it was their tabards were askew, and it was quite common. So. Oh
yeah. The we did point out many slovenly Jedi on the convention floor, and you know, because sometimes they'll like get all balled up on him, you know, all this kind of stuff be hanging off to the side, you know. So this is all, you know, stuff that you should be, you know, be keeping an eye on.
Sorry, can I just jump in regards to that?
Yeah.
I've got a lot of stuff actually under Anonymous's recommendation of Twin Rose Designs, and it was actually Andrea's suggestion for me to skip the tabards entirely, just because, especially in the case of these robes, they're primarily geared right now, especially to a male audience. So just because of my lack of shoulder width and everything, I decided to skip the tabards, and also just one of those things to kind of be aware of, like especially at my height, you know, and full mask on, I get mistaken for, well, not being me basically. But as far as flexibility is concerned, if you can do that, your costume's probably in good shape. You know, you can get your saber over your head, but it's quite interesting seeing people, whether it's either it's too tight or, as you mentioned, the tabards. If everything doesn't have flex to it and it starts going askew, then you look really weird really fast. I mean, that's kind of anything that's highly prosthetic driven. You can look up something like Emma Bell cosplay. If anything prosthetic or really rigid starts going askew, it goes askew fast and can fail you mid-con.
Yeah. The lifting up your arm is a good one. Probably the best solution for that, I think, are shoulder tucks. Because when you if you're, what happens is this, I believe this gets too short for the shape or whatever. But if you tuck here, you've given that sleeve a little extra movement or whatever. So you have to make the sleeve a little bit longer. But all the ones that all the tunics that I have that have a shoulder tuck in them, you can move your arms all around. All the ones that don't, when you do this, you start getting that pillowing out the side of your belt, you know, and then you have to kind of cinch it down every now and then, and you know, your shirt will kind of open up again, and then again we have the Slovenly Jedi. So,
and when you're deciding on your costume and what you want it to do, just like Celine was saying, is like you get to a point where things they're designed for specific things. So if you design a costume that's very elaborate, then it might be a 2 hours and then you're done. You go take it off and switch to something else or go back to civvies, for lack of a better term, and go mundane clothes, as we like to call it in the SCA. Because, or you can design your costume so that it's comfortable and you can wear it all weekend. And that's fine too. But somewhere in between the two, is usually where most people end up. They can wear it for a while and not. Like a good example is Darth Vader. Darth Vader is a pretty elaborate costume, but there aren't a lot of pieces to it. And once you get it on, it's pretty comfortable for a little bit, according to all of my friends that have Darth Vaders. I know a few of them. But at a certain point, it just becomes too hot. You're wearing black leather covered with black wool with a big plastic helmet on, so most of the guys only wear that for an hour or so, and then they got to go switch out. And the same thing with the Wookiees. You're wearing a giant, fur suit for a little while, and you have to go switch out. Stormtroopers, most of them can last for several hours just fine, but they have, very reduced mobility because of the full suit of armor. So there are things they can't do, and certainly things they can't even see. That's the other thing to consider with masks and things is how comfortable are you not being able to see where you're going or what you're doing. So that's always an important thing.
Yeah, and that's a really good segue too into something that we can talk about, which is helmets, right? Because we all have our helmets. Celine had hers on, and I have mine on here. We were talking about this. This is this is a customized version of the ex-Cosser helmet. I like this one better than the Black Series up there, just because it fits my head better. I'm missing the visor. I got to replace the fabric that was on the visor there, but other than that, it works great. This is a really comfortable helmet, and my eyes sit up right here in the faceplate, so I have really, really, really good visibility, especially for a helmet. Right, I can just barely see the edges right here if I turn my eyes, but I have a lot of peripheral vision. So this is I really, really enjoy this helmet. The Black Series one, the visor is a little bit further away. It's a little slimmer, so I have a much more reduced kind of field of vision. Celine, your mask, that's got the two eyes, right? How's the visibility in there?
The visibility in this thing, there's kind of a close up of the eyes. It's kind of a mesh type thing. So like the outer mesh of something like a jersey. The vision, it just plain sucks. You have virtually no periphery. It's very dark, and it can get kind of claustrophobic in there if you're not used to wearing a helmet. I mean, I wore my kendo headpiece for 4 hours yesterday and was getting hit over the head, so I'm fine with it. But for a lot of people, moving through a Comic-Con and that kind of barrage of every sense but your sight, and that's very dim, can be pretty unnerving to people. John was actually mentioning like having the big heavy plastic helmet. Like these robes are hot, and then you have a weight on your head that's keeping all the heat in. It can be a bit of a challenge. That said, though, like this is pretty detailed hard plastic. This is the Creation's Nest version of the Acolyte / Eradicator helmet from Star Wars: The Old Republic, and it's a full one. So, yeah, vision's awful, but usually it looks great. And as we found out, because Sam, the guy who runs it, doesn't have it curved into the face, it flares out from the chin a bit. You can still talk to people. But one other thing I will mention, if you're going to be wearing one of these all day, get yourself some like cushion foam from a craft store, because even though they sometimes will put some foam to kind of keep it away from your face, the crown of the head is where it's going to be bearing most of the weight. So if you actually put a square there, the whole weight of the helmet can be pushing down on your head, and it's not hard plastic digging into you. There's that cushioning there. So that'll just little things to make your life a little less painful while you're walking around a convention floor.
Yeah, yeah. The depending on the weight of the helmet, absolutely. Now, Nero, you got one of Zach's helmets that you were wearing at Celebration, the Revan one, right?
Yeah, he made me a Revan helmet, and it's the full helmet. It's actually all made out of foam. So actually, I was thinking about it when Celine was just talking about that, because this is extremely lightweight. I mean, it's weighs virtually nothing. So that's one nice thing that I didn't have to worry about, was the weight of it kind of bearing down on me. But like anything, when your head's enclosed in something like this, it's going to be hot. A little bit smothering, poor visibility for the most part. Seems like most Star Wars helmets out there are kind of designed with poor visibility for whatever reason. Mandalorian helmets, a lot of the trooper helmets, they're just not really designed with obviously it's a movie, but still, this is actually a really nice one, and this is something we're looking to make more of. Because it's really cool, like the kind of stuff that you can do with foam, like he was talking about before. He can probably talk more about it and like how he does this kind of stuff. But this is just different layers of foam put on top of essentially a base. I think he said this was like Captain America design for the helmet. So it's just basically a kind of a standard type of helmet with all these details put on with just different layers of foam. So you can kind of see there's several layers here to form the front of it. And then for the visor, you basically just, you can really get, I think I got it at Harbor Freight as well. It's those visors, the protective visors for when you're working with chemicals. It's basically a face shield to prevent splashes of chemicals in your eyes. You can cut one of those up, and you can make all kinds of different visors and whatnot for these kind of things. So that's what we tend to do. We do that, and then we tint them. So it's still pretty visible. It fogs a little bit in this helmet in particular, but that just kind of happens when you have your face up that close to it. But
sorry,
otherwise,
could I just jump in for a quick moment? For visors that fog up, a quick trick for people. I learned this because I still have to wear my glasses for kendo. Is I have just like a pair of actual sporting glasses that you can get at your optician. If you take some like degreasing dish soap, just like washing the sink dish soap, put a very tiny a film over your glasses or your visor, especially the inside, and then just wipe it with a Kleenex, and you can still kind of see that film. That will keep the like the moisture from your breath from adhering to the visor, so you can still see. And like when I'm like 2 hours worth of kendo practice, I don't get fogged up.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good call. Yeah,
and it's a lot cheaper than that spray you can buy.
Yeah,
$2 for dish soap, or like $10 for defogging spray.
Exactly. Yeah, it's I never I don't know, I never thought of that, because that's what you usually do for like a mask when you're in snorkeling or scuba diving. I think we actually have some stuff for that, so that's a good call. Definitely something
Yeah,
else.
the other solution is, and I think Zach can probably talk about this too, is the mesh, right? Is you can get certain black fabrics that when you stretch them over, you can see through very easily, but since the mask is all dark, you can't see in. So sometimes, like on Celine's mask, it might be too thick, and that would not that would not facilitate that. But anyway, let's talk to Zach about making the helmets and those concerns and stuff like that, as far as visibility, visors, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is really how I learned how to do all the foam in the first place. I first started off with this Deathstroke helmet, which is why I started laughing when you guys start mentioning visibility, because Deathstroke only has one eye. So, making this, I thought, all right, it's not going to be that big of a deal. A lot of people tend to put black mesh here so they can see. I didn't do that, and I regretted it because I was walking through a con basically with one hand on my girlfriend. It's because I couldn't see anybody on my right side, and I felt terrible bumping into children. So I had to take it off. This is what I started out with. This isn't foam. This is actually paper that I ended up paper macheing, and then I had planned on resin. So for anyone that wants to get into making their own helmets, this is made out of a pepper curl file, which is basically just like almost like a 3D modeling, but it's created so that you can fold it with, cardstock or paper. And this is actually how I start to make my templates. So for instance, when I looked to make, I was looking to make a Sabine helmet for Nero's wife. I went on to, one of the forums. There's a lot of them, especially for Mandalore armor. And, I printed out a template. I sized it up. Unfortunately, this was a little bit too big. So I'm working on that here. And then I use those as templates when I'm cutting out the foam. Visibility, it really just depends on the character. I mean, this Red Hood, I have great peripherals on this, surprisingly, considering it's pretty much a square. And you would think this centerpiece would block your vision, but it didn't bother me at all. And it's pretty wide, so I can see out to my side. But it gets extremely hot. And even with some of these foam helmets, if you don't size them right, they can feel a little tight after a while. And you might not notice that at first, but it definitely wears in on you. For heavier helmets, what I like to use is this foam here. And this is actually for air conditioners, what you stick around the edging. And so usually this comes with an adhesive, and you can get it in long strips really cheap. I think Walmart sells them, and definitely Home Depot. And I just cut them, you line them inside of the helmet. Great for hard plastic helmets because it does have the adhesive here if you're worried about gluing to the inside of your helmet because maybe you want to take it out later. This will just peel right out later down the road. It's the most important thing I could say if you're going to make helmets is, again, a sharp blade. This was my first foam helmet, the Armored Batman. And if you look closely, you can see how rough it is. And that's because I was not sharpening my box cutter when I was cutting this. Second, adhesive. This was made with hot glue. And hot glue is a great thing to use. However, you have to worry about it being in the sun. If I were to leave this out in the sun, aside from the foam kind of wanting to go back to being flat, depending on the type of hot glue you use, it can start coming apart. So that's why I use contact cement. There's a lot of great. I actually learned from a few YouTubers, Zing Prod or Evil Ted, great information on how to cut foam and use contact cement. Because contact cement, I thought this was godsend when I first learned how to use this. But yeah, the layers, you can get foam in different sizes. What I used for Nero's was I started off with actually a thinner foam. This is something you can get from Michael's. I don't remember exactly how thick this is, but I used this. I basically started his off with a Captain America helmet because, I couldn't really find any good examples of the back of Revan's helmet. And, I wanted to take a little bit of creative liberty. So I started off with this, and then I created the front plate that everyone else seems to make. And then I adhered it from there. And I was really happy with the example. I actually really think his helmet's the best one I've ever made so far. So I'm really excited to make more of those. I love making helmets, and I'm actually looking to start making this Sith Acolyte, but it's very, very ornate and very detailed. So there's a lot to learn there for me. But the mesh, I'm actually part of the Knights of Ren group on Facebook. And I'm looking to make a Kylo cosplay, and a lot of them use some use black pantyhose, but the most popular thing seems to be dust filters for a PC. You can get them really cheap on like Amazon, and you just it's this little like mesh that I guess is supposed to keep dust from going into your computer, and they pull that out and they use that, and it seems pretty black from the outside, but you can see perfectly well from the inside.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I know there's lots of different different types of meshes out there or whatever, but yeah, I had not heard about that. I'm on that group as well, but I've been so busy with everything else. Anyway, so yes, so we've talked about the movement, we've talked about visibility if we're wearing a helmet and all that kind of thing. Let's talk about another thing that we've kind of hinted on, the kind of thing, and that's comfort. Because there should be a certain level of comfort that is paid attention to. Otherwise, you're really going to be miserable wherever you are, and that can be surprising. It can like pop up into surprising ways. As John, do you got any like, I don't know, stories or advice for people as far as paying attention to comfort and being appropriately comfortable in that kind of sense? Like I'm always big on boots. Like, spend the extra money for a good pair of boots, because if your boots suck, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're probably in hell.
Yeah, I know my sister personally, while she was doing her Jedi cosplay, went through 4 different pair of boots, I believe, until she found ones that actually fit good and could pass, the Rebel Legion standards. So that was, 2 different sizes of the same one. Boots are, if you happy feet, happy life. I mean, happy feet, happy con. You're absolutely right. I ended up buying a new pair of boots simply because my old ones were just, I bought them when I was like 22 and they just didn't fit anymore. But armor, that's, it goes back to the thing. It's like, how long can you wear it? And, I made the mistake one year. I'm willing to admit this. I was recovering from, well, not really recovering, but it was shortly after thyroid cancer surgery. So the ups and downs of having your thyroid removed are really rough. And I decided that, well, I was at a gigantic SCA event, the Society of Creative Anachronism. Me and my friend were in full samurai armor with steel helmets. And we decided to walk all the way out to the parking lot, grab something out of the vehicle we'd forgot, and then walk back. Huge mistake. It's like a 3-mile walk in full armor with steel helmet after, having basically been sedentary for 2 months. So, know your limitations. Don't, end up missing fighting the next day because you decide to walk all the way out to the car. Cons are kind of the same thing. A lot of people don't realize how far you actually walk during conventions and events like that. So, that's the only really dumb story I have of me being particularly stupid when wearing armor.
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't even just have to be armor. I mean, I know some of this stuff gets really elaborate too. I know the Kylo Ren costumes can get, if you're doing like one of the Anovos ones, or you're doing a full on, Dawn Bright, treatment of Kylo, you've got suspenders on underneath there. And we had talked about this before the show started, being sure, as Celine said, that you have your bathroom, plan, right? Make sure you know that before putting your costume on, and then 3 hours into the con, you're like, uh-oh. So I mean, there's a lot of these little things. I know, like if you've got a robe, right? Robes can get hot depending on what they're made of.
Especially if they're lined.
Yes, yeah, and they can get caught on things, and then people step on them, and you know, there's all manner of things to talk about in there. But so so as people are putting their costumes together, that's probably something you should think about, whether it's just soft bits and all that kind of thing, or whether you're going full on armor, you know, LEDs, flashing bits, and all that kind of thing. You always got to think about how long you're going to be doing what you're doing, and you know, how realistic is that to keep that going on. What are your exit plans as such? All right, so probably to finish up here, let's talk about a little bit about how to put a costume together if, you know, on a budget, or if you don't know where to start. Obviously, there's a bunch of places that we'll put in links to. Twin Roses is one. Hampton's Jedi Outfitters is another, that will give you, you know, kind of like ready-made costumes and that kind of thing. But as people are starting to put something together, what's a good thing to do if we're putting it together? Just, you know, maybe just like a Jedi kind of soft type of thing, or whatever to get started. Well, John, we got you on the mic. Why don't you?
Well, I would say research. I mean, this is, you know, the medieval reenactor in me coming out, but you know, it's like, look at everything and decide what the look you're going for is. And if you're looking for, you know, my Jedi costume is based very heavily on Qui-Gon and Mace's look in the first couple of movies, Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. But it's ultimately a generic Jedi, and that's kind of where I went. Everybody thinks because I have long brown hair that I'm Qui-Gon, which is fine. It doesn't bother me. But you know, as far as Rebel Legion's concerned, I have a generic Jedi. But so research. Don't be afraid to start with a McCall's pattern. There's a Space Warrior McCall's pattern or something out there. And if you're trying to sew yourself, I suppose is the thing. And don't be afraid to try to make the costume yourself. You know, I mean, none of us were master swordsmen, you know, the first day we walked into our training hall, you know, and you're not going to be a master tailor or seamstress the first time you try to make a costume, but you know, you'll learn. Now, my Jedi outfit, I did not make, my wife did for me back in 2005, and it was the first thing she's sewn since home ec class. I still wear it today, and it's, you know, it's exceptional, but she put a great deal of work into it, and it took her about a week worth of, about 40 hours worth of work to get it where she was happy with it. So don't be afraid to try if you decide you want to. Yeah, it's just.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Now you can, and if you don't want to go for a costume, like you said, a generic Jedi or something like that, you can throw things together. Going out for one of the costume things is one thing. But if you're just trying to throw a kind of like a little costume together, like I've got this thing, which is not, I mean, it's not really a canon costume. It's Star Wars-esque, but I've also used it as a Doctor Strange type of thing and all that. Nero, you got a bunch of kind of hodgy-podgy costume thing going on.
Oh yeah, I'm the master of just winging it, because I tend to be one of the, as far as people I know who cosplay, I tend to be one of the least concerned with accuracy or doing a specific costume. I tend to kind of do my own thing. When we went, Anonymous and I were at a celebration with John Solomon. I was doing a Jedi Revan. So the way I thought about it, you know, when Zach made me the helmet, you know, everybody does a Darth Revan, the standard, you know, the armor, the black robes and all that, which is awesome. So I kind of said, you know, maybe I'll do a Jedi Revan, something a little different. Doing something of Revan from when he was, you know, fighting in the Mandalorian Wars. So I kind of put together a costume, and it was just kind of a few different things. It was a martial arts uniform underneath, And then it has this. This is a tunic, a custom tunic I got from Twin Roses. It's nice and lightweight. The helmet, some black boots, you know, that kind of thing. So it was a very custom, very unique kind of thing. And I guess that's what kind of one of the biggest things I want to kind of throw out there to people. When you're making a costume, probably the first thing you should do is decide how, I guess, what you want to prioritize. Because, you know, when you're making a costume, there's accuracy, there's price, there's comfort, and all those things are going to kind of balance each other out. So, you know, you take a hit to comfort sometimes to go for a more accurate look, or, you know, maybe you have to spend a little more to make it more accurate or more, you know, functional. So it's all kind of a balancing act, and you just have to find out where you fall on that. You know, and there's, you can see from our panel, there's a wide variety of different levels of that, and, you know, some are more recognizable. You know, people will probably recognize your character more if you do a more accurate kind of like character costume, whereas something more like this is just a little more generic. So, you know, you won't get that recognition, but you know, if you do it well and you pull it off and you really get creative with it, you know, it can work out well too. So either way, just, you know, I guess mostly just decide early on and figure out where you draw that line, and that's kind of where you're going to go with.
Yeah, okay. Good advice. I know I've gotten, you know, just a generic whatever, you know, if you put something together that's elaborate enough or it has a particular, you know, gimmick to it or whatever, people love it all the same. So, you know, they'll come up and take pictures. Michael, or Celine, when you were putting, Michael or Celine, really, if you would, when you were putting yours kind of together, you know, piecing yours together, like we've got some stuff from Twin Roses, we've got some stuff from, you know, just our closets, really, you know, or what have you. Where did you kind of look and pull from?
Most of my pull was, well, I've showed it off plenty of times, but Bane's Heart Lightsaber is back there, Darth Sana being my original cosplay, but they always describe Sith in black, so it's easy to just grab like a black gi from a martial arts store, and there you go, there's your start. So it can be that simple. I've since like trimmed my hair and stopped dyeing it blonde. Stopped doing that years ago, but that was, you know, something that simple can be a start. And as far as the newer one with the Sith Acolyte / Sith Eradicator, that's just Star Wars: The Old Republic. And because I didn't necessarily want to get into or try going for a full set of armor, and also there was that kind of comfort issue. How comfortable am I going to be in a full set of armor? So I just kind of figured if I have the big, you know, big scary helmet, that's enough, sort of thing. And Andrea, again from Twin Roses, could make the robes. So I guess kind of going back to Nero's point, if you have enough to kind of get it to where it's recognizable as your inspiration, that's all you really need. So pick up what's important to you. And one other thing I'll note, just going back to the robes, something like these, they're not really bracers, they're just more like cloth wraps for your sleeves. If you don't have anything to manage your sleeves, if you're doing Jedi or Sith, those can really get in the way if you're just as far as comfort, mobility, they snag on things. And I've seen people's sleeve knock displays over, so because they get caught. But just something I figured I'd throw out there.
Yeah. Michael, how about you? You said you kind of threw yours together with different types of stuff.
Yes, concerning the belt and the tabard and so on. But you have to start with something. I cannot tailor a rope. That's not in my ability. So my wife came up with the idea to buy me a birthday present, which in fact was a ninja suit type of thing. It came in with trousers and a martial arts robe and something, and some pieces that you can always throw in when you want to combine some. Uh-oh. Dann mach die Tür zu, mein Schatz. Okay. Woke up my little Jedi. Sorry. So this was my starting point, and all the other stuff that made it Jedi or Sith, that came afterwards, and I had to do it myself. But you have to start with something, and again, that was a ninja kind of suit thing, and there was also a cape. Maybe if I find something that fits in that direction, maybe I can do something with that too. So just keep your eyes open. And
yeah. Yes, it's all very, very simple. I think belts deserve a little bit of a honorable mention too. When choosing normal belts, thickness is what you're looking for, right? As thick as they can be, right? And then, you know, if you can get a removable belt buckle, awesome. Then you can like get like a special type of belt buckle that doesn't look, you know, as beltish to things. But definitely one of the things is, you know, that girth, which is going to be there, is going to give you a lot more I don't know, authenticity to it. I guess putting a few belts on too is also an interesting way of doing things. So there's all kinds of issues that way. And then of course pouches, you can get leather pouches, just like foam pouches and stuff like that at Target, that you can easily just use in that fashion. Taking labels off, maybe covering them up with some type of material or whatever. These are really easy things to throw together and get things done. And then of course, if you're watching us, you probably already have one of these. So this pretty much makes the costume. You can put pretty much anything that looks vaguely Jedi or Star Wars on there, and throw one of these on your belt, and boom, you got no problem whatsoever.
As a quick side note on pouches, this pouch is the first one I made, and I got it, I believe at Joann's or any craft store will sell little kits like this. And it was just a little $16 kit to make a little leather pouch. I just inscribed the lines on it, and that's what got me started back into leatherworking. So
there you go.
And you can decorate it however you want, and they're $15, $16. A little bit of leather dye or shoe polish, and you can have your own Jedi pouch. Yeah.
I mean, when you start getting into a lot of the stuff, some of this stuff is so very simple, but it's just there's a lot of time and effort involved in doing it, and to do it well, it takes a lot of talent as well. All right, well, we're coming down to the end here. Do we have anything we want to end on before we close out the show? I think we
covered pretty much everything, but I'll say this because I know we kind of talked about a lot of the tricks of cosplaying, and I guess I just don't want anybody to be intimidated by it, because like we said, there's a lot of challenges, as far as it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of practice. Wearing it can be not the most comfortable thing in the world when you're surrounded by hundreds of people at a convention, but it all ends up being worth it if you're passionate enough to go through the effort and do it properly and everything like that. When you get to a convention and everybody else is wearing awesome stuff, and they're asking to take photos with you and all that kind of stuff. Like it's just a lot of fun. So it's definitely worth all the hassle that we just described in the past hour.
Yes. And of course, this is just scratching the surface of it. It's, you could talk about it forever. Anyway. All right. Well, thank you, panel, for joining us. Thank you, Zach, for coming in. Remember, we'll look for Reverend Army and all that on there. Any last words for the audience before we take off?
Just have fun. Ultimately, no one's going to be 100% screen accurate. And if, you want to work on a budget, have fun. I like to, easiest thing, if you don't know what you want to do, crossovers. I wanted to do something fast. When I buy clothes, I'll look at something like, you know what, I could use that for a cosplay, but I could also, wear this, so, I did a lumberjack Deathstroke. So I just wore, orange flannel, had, some toy axes from when I was a kid and threw on the helmet. Don't worry about it. Everyone's having fun and just enjoy yourself.
Yep.
Thanks for letting me on.
Hey, thanks for being on. I think that's probably the perfect place to end the show today. So thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for all those people who asked questions. Hopefully we got to them all. We will see you next time in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. Have a great day. Happy sabering.